now. So we can get started with what today's topic is today. All right, so today is your seed plants, which is an extension of the land plants that we introduced on Tuesday. So these organisms kind of are like a component of all of the land plants, but they are much more highly derived than the organisms that we've looked at so far. So that's why they get their own chapter, because they're so specialized. And that is actually why we have today, the only chapter we're looking at is the seed plant, which seems a little weird that, you know, we have two different chapters just on seed plants, but actually if you think about the entire diversity of plants and how important they are, it's actually a pretty small amount. It's just that in general, plants don't get a lot of love in today's society. So for today, there are a lot of different video lectures that I created for you for each of the different sections. And I'm going to show that to you guys first. I'm going to share that screen. Okay. All right. So this is, all right, Blackboard. All right, so there's only one smart book assignment for today, just chapter 30, but notice that there are a lot of video lectures. Section 30.1, actually I broke into two sections, and I kind of, you know, identified what the topics for each of those are. And then the section on the angiosperms, I also split into two sections, because the life cycle of the angiosperms is a little, there's a little detail in there that I wanted to emphasize and for you to take into a smaller little blip, which leads me into the videos that I have. So like I said, I had a separate video just for the angiosperm life cycle, and I followed that up with two videos on the part of that life cycle which to me is kind of the more challenging and hard to wrap your head around, and that's the part called double fertilization. Because in the flowering plants, there is the actual fertilization, which leads to the growth of the sporophyte stage in the plant, and there's also the fertilization of this endosperm, which is the nutrition that helps to support the developing seed. So it's a little hard to wrap your head around, and so these videos in two different ways kind of help you see the differences. One is 4 minutes, one is 50 seconds. So one goes into a lot more detail than the other, but I think the visual helps. And part of the other thing that I think what was hard for me when I was learning this was the fact that we didn't have animations to be able to watch. So we didn't have YouTube a million years ago. I don't even remember how, it was like 20 years ago, 25 years ago when I was in college. And so use these tools to help you understand it. So gymnosperm life cycle, that I have all of the gymnosperms in one section or one video lecture. I do have a video here for you to watch too. It's a little shorter. This one I think is a little easier to kind of wrap your head around because it doesn't have the double fertilization part to it. But it is a little hard to see where things like microspores and megaspores are being produced. And if you're taking the lab, this really helps if you're paying attention to kind of what the different slides and the different structures look like. These two things kind of go together. There's another thing that I added today that I wanted to show you. It's a module on flower dissection, and so I don't know if you're looking at it in lab. I'm going to show it to you in my computer. I can't get it to work in Chrome, so I had to show it to you. I'm showing it to you in Safari right now. Oh, wait, is this Safari? Yeah, so I'm showing it to you in Safari. I think it probably works in Firefox as well. But if you are in lab and you're using this, actually go through and do it. But I'm going to demonstrate why I think it's so useful. Actually, I was looking at this a little earlier. So when you pull it up, you get to do different dissections. And what I really think is helpful is looking at the base, the area where your ovary is and the ovules lie. Those are the things that are often hard to kind of, you know, picture. And so if you cut open you can actually see where the ovules are inside the entire ovary. And there are kind of, you can see it, you see the ovules being removed from the ovary. So there's a lot of really interesting pictures that if you are looking at in detail, you can actually get a sense for what they look like. Okay, so here's a cross section where you actually, or longitudinal section, where you actually can see all of the individual ovules inside the ovary. So I think these pictures help, or at least they helped me when I was looking at the individual structures, because a lot of times you're trying to ask yourself, well, where's the gametophyte and which one is the sporophyte? And these pictures can help you see where those different things lie. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and talk about some of the misconceptions today. And one of the misconceptions is a reiteration of what I brought up on Tuesday, is the reiteration, reemphasis that meiosis, it's not related to sexual reproduction. Meiosis produces your spores, and it is an asexual form, and that spores develop into your gametophyte. So that is an asexual process. Another hard thing or misconception is related to the gametophyte stage. What I've talked about in the video lectures was that we see a process which is in evolution where we see a reduced size in your gametophyte. And it was a little, it was easy to see that as we went from your mosses to your ferns. The fern gametophyte got smaller. But now we're at the point where that gametophyte stage is microscopic and only consists of a few cells. So it is a pattern of reduced size in your gametophyte. And because that gametophyte gets so small, there can be some confusion because your gametophyte produces the gametes, but it's not an organ. It's not equivalent to our gonads. It is actually the entire organism, even though it only consists of a few cells. And I know that that is a little confusing, but the few cells is your gametophyte stage. So for example, the pollen grain consists of 3 cells. That is still the organism. It is still a multicellular haploid stage organism. And that is confusing because we have, organs that consist of more cells than that. All right, the other thing that I'm going to try to get you guys to think about when you're looking at the pictures of like a pine tree or a pine cone, try to ask yourself the question as to what the relationship is between different parts of that organism. So which one is the parent, which one is the child, and which one is potentially the grandparent. So for example, if we're thinking about the sporophyte inside a seed, that is the grandchild of the adult sporophyte. And that kind of like cluster of cells that was the gametophyte, it is the parent of that very reduced gametophyte. So you can actually see kind of 3 generations when we're looking at the seed. You've got this parent, you have the child, the parent, and the grandparent, like all kind of mixed together in this structure. And that is confusing, but you can identify that if you kind of think about sporophyte produced by gametophyte, and that gametophyte was produced by sporophyte. Okay. All right, so I know that's confusing, and that's partly why I'm bringing it up, so that those are things you can think about as you're reading your book and trying to kind of conceptualize alternation of generations. All right, so since I liked the poll questions, I have a couple of, where is these? True and false questions about your seed plants that I was going to ask. And these, like I said, these are not graded, but I like that they can get us to interact a little bit and they highlight things I want you to pay attention to. Okay, so it is live. I'll give you guys about 2 minutes for these 4 true or false questions, and then we will review. All right, just 1 more minute or until everybody's got an answer in. But right now, it looks like about 75% of you have participated. All right. All right, it looks like I have 90% participation, so I'm gonna go ahead and end this now. All right, and oh, I got 18, great. Okay, so I am gonna share these results with you just to see where you are, where the class lies, and then I'll tell you what the correct answers are. So the first question was about the life cycle of seed plants and whether that includes the gametophyte stage. So this is false, because with your plants and they have alternation of generations as their life cycle, and that does include both a sporophyte and a gametophyte stage, and both of those are multicellular organisms, and your sporophyte is diploid and your gametophyte is haploid, but all of your plants, seed plants, have both a gametophyte and a sporophyte, but it is a very reduced size structure. The question number 2 is that your spore grows into a seed, and this is also false. So good with both of these, the majority of the class was on the right track. Your spore does not grow into a seed. Your spore grows into your gametophyte stage, and your gametophyte produces gametes. In the number 3, the flowering plant life cycles, the female gametophyte is the ovule. Okay, this was, I didn't actually expect this to be the one everyone got right. So the majority of the class got it wrong. So for this, it's actually incorrect. But with your female gametophyte, it actually resides or is encapsulated within the ovule, but it's not equivalent. So the ovule is a larger structure, and inside the ovule, there are about 8 cells, around 8 cells within your angiosperm, which are your gametophyte stage. So the ovule is bigger and consists of more cells, and it has additional tissue, and then it protects your developing gametophyte stage. So that was a really hard question, but intentional so that I could re-emphasize the size of that gametophyte. Okay, and double fertilization, this was true. Your double fertilization, and I'm trying to emphasize this because this is a hard concept. Double fertilization is called double fertilization because 2 things are fertilized. You end up with the production of a diploid zygote from your sperm and your egg coming together, and then you end up with this crazy endosperm, which results from is actually triploid tissue. So you have your sperm, which actually fuses with 2 cells, so it ends up being triploid, which is actually the food for your or the nutrition for your developing sporophyte zygote in the cell. So I'm going to stop sharing this, and I, as a reminder to myself, I wanted to share with you, I did post the results, and I will do this again today. Not Safari, I want to share Google Chrome with you. If you, and I'll post the results from this, not the results, but the questions, I'll post this in today's folder. But if you had not seen it, the questions from Tuesday, I posted down way at the end of the folder, and I'll do this again. I'll put a little post that says, you know, these are the pretest questions. I'll put in bold what the correct answers are. And then there was remember I was confused about why I had written that there was a question was false. The question originally said, you know, plants are defined as multicellular, eukaryotic, photosynthetic autotrophs. And I was confused because in my head, when I was writing it, I thought, of course, that's false, because I had thought about it in detail. But when I was sharing it with you, I thought, why, that's true. If you think about it in terms of land plants, it is true. So land plants, this is how land plants are defined. But if you are defining plants in a more broad sense, and this would include your green algae as well, so if you define it as your green plants, then it is actually false, because that category would include your green algae, and your green algae are not all multicellular organisms. However, if I was to ask you this ever, I am very specific, and I wouldn't pick something that I would, my goal is never to trick you. My goal is to ask you a question to figure out whether or not you actually understood this or not. So I would be clear, and I would put land plants or seed plants, or you know, provide you a little bit more extra information, because in my opinion, my goal in assessing you is not necessarily how good of a close reader you are. It is to see whether or not you understood the content. So just wanted to make that clear. Okay, so the last thing that I wanted to share with you guys today, and I'm trying to say folks instead. So what I'm going to share with folks is one more thing to share is this Word document. So I write notes to myself for things that I want to share with you. So this is my misconception document for today. And if you haven't pulled up the practiced documents for alternation of generations, please do so. This is one diagram. And so I wanted to show you this. This is an example of something I might use for a test question. So notice everything is blank, right? So what I want us to do as a class is just to look at this diagram, okay? So if you're looking at this, there isn't a huge amount of information, but what information, and you can put this in the chat box or you can answer and unmute, what is the only information that we have here?
Haploid and diploid.
Yes, thank you. Yes, awesome. Yes, but that is crucial information. So when you see a diagram like this on an exam, identify the information you have, right? So the upper part of this figure is haploid and the lower part is diploid. So we know one stage is haploid and one stage is diploid. So which is our haploid stage?
Top.
Yeah, oh yes, yep. So
Haploid?
the top is the blue. Yes. So that is your haploid stage. And is that your sporophyte or is that your gametophyte?
Sporophyte?
Sporophyte, yes. Yay, this is fantastic. All right, yes. So this is your sporophyte. So you had enough information to figure out which one is the sporophyte. So by default, this is your gametophyte, right? And so from here, you can go in either direction, right? So your sporophyte, if we go backwards, we know your sporophyte develops from spores. So these are your spores. And if your sporophyte produces gametes, then to the right of the sporophyte are your gametes, right? So it either produces an egg or a sperm. So you have that information. When you have your gametes fuse, what would go in this little box is fertilization. So your gametes fuse, there's fertilization, and that produces a diploid zygote. And that zygote develops into a gametophyte, and your spores are produced via meiosis. So just with a very, very, crude information, you're able to untangle this figure. And so that's what I'm going to ask you to do on an exam. So the more practice you have, the more useful that is. And I forgot, I pulled this up too to show you that how small the gametophyte is. So this picture here, this is not from your textbook, it's from some scientific article on plants. This picture here, that is the ovule inside a flower. And so this colored picture inside, those, which is blown up in panel B, those are the cells that make up the female gametophyte, which is just a few cells, but it's clustered inside the ovule. And why I'm showing you this is that I didn't see this labeled in your textbook. So it wasn't clear, like they didn't label the gametophyte inside your ovule, and I wanted to specify that for you in a separate figure. Okay, so that is everything I have for you today. Let's see, so on Tuesday you'll have exam 3. So definitely be comfortable with alternation of generations and where the different stages are in your plants. I think that's the bulk. We'll be doing things like fungi and animal development next week. So anybody that likes animals, we'll be looking at different videos for those. If there's any questions you have for me, I actually don't have a lot going on tomorrow, so I'm available via Zoom most of tomorrow if you wanted to, if you needed help with anything. And but other than that, have a fantastic weekend, and I look forward to seeing you again on Tuesday.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, everyone.